cosine squared of theta times the secant squared of theta minus 1 equals sine squared of theta. Usually I start working on the more complicated side because it's easier to kind of simplify that down. So we're trying to get it to just be sine squared of theta. Let's look at this part in the parentheses. Secant squared theta minus 1. Let's see if we can find an identity that looks very similar to that. There we have 1 plus tangent squared theta equals secant squared theta. So the only difference is it has secant squared theta minus 1. So we moved the 1 to the other side. So just using our sweet equation solving skills, we could say that that is equal to tangent squared of theta, right? Because if you moved the 1 to the other side, it would come out to secant squared theta minus 1. So if we rewrote that, cosine squared theta didn't change, but then we can replace this secant squared theta minus 1 with tangent squared theta. Great, so we've already shrunk it down a little bit. Now let's think about the definition of tangent. Tangent is always our y over x, or in our case, sine over cosine. So we can trade out tangent squared theta. We can make it sine squared theta over cosine squared theta. Now we're multiplying that by this other cosine squared theta out here, which is cosine squared theta over 1. But you don't need to even do that part. So now we can simplify. You have a cosine squared theta in the numerator and in the denominator, so we can cancel those out. All we're left with is sine squared theta over 1, which is just sine squared theta, which that was what we were looking for the whole time. Okay. Oh goodness me, oh my. Sine of theta minus cosine of theta over sine of theta equals 1 minus cotangent of theta. Okay. This is a little strange, but we did something similar to this when we did the quadratic formula. If you look, we can simplify part of this fraction, the sine of theta over the sine of theta, great. But we can't just cancel out the sine of theta like you want to and make it negative cosine of theta. You have to have it factored out if you're going to do that. But what we can do is we can split this fraction. We can make it sine of theta over sine of theta minus the cosine of theta over sine of theta. So if you would have had this earlier in the year, I would have said, oh, just mush it together and make it one fraction. But we're going to split it now. Because this part on the left, we can simplify. Sine of theta over the sine of theta is equal to 1, right? It's the same thing in the numerator and denominator. Now, cosine over sine, if you look down here, is the definition of cotangent. Cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. So it would be cosine over sine. So we can replace the cosine of theta over sine of theta with cotangent of theta. Holy smokes, that was what we were looking for the whole time. 1 minus cotangent of theta. Sweet.